Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Day 2, the Friday matches from the OpTic Major are in the books. Today we're going to talk about those matches, talk about how each team performed. We're going to look ahead to the matches for Day 3, the Saturday matchups, which will get us set for Championship Sunday of the first major of the year. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's hop into the bracket and the stats for those Friday matches. So as we take a peek here, this is what the bracket currently looks like. So when it comes to the matches today, we basically played all of the elimination round matches down here, as well as the matchup between the Los Angeles Thieves and the Minnesota Rockers. So to start with the first matchup of the day on Friday, that was LAG versus the Minnesota Rocker. All these stats are from breakingpoint.gg if you want to do a little bit of research of your own and take a peek at these. But this was a hot 3-0 for Minnesota. If we look at the individual game modes underneath, 250, 175 in the hard point, you basically always expect Minnesota to come away with these S&D wins. They won the Berlin S&D 6-3, and then the Gavutu control was pretty close, and we actually saw them play Gavutu control against LA Thieves, which they almost came away with the win in that one as well. But overall, this was a pretty convincing win, and I think a lot of it had to do with the confidence that Minnesota gained from winning that first map, because they have not been a good hardpoint, nor have they been a good control team so far this year. And it's unfortunate that they started in the losers bracket. I think that all of these tournaments should be double elimination, but you lose once and you're out, and we'll talk about that matchup later. So as it stands right now, overall, a really good day, and in this first match, a really good first match out of Attach. You can see down here towards the bottom, he came away with a 1.36 overall KD. Everybody played super well from Minnesota in this first matchup, but definitely wanted to make sure that I was pointing out the map that Attach had. Coming back to the bracket here, the second matchup of the day was LA Thieves versus NYSL, and this one really wasn't all that competitive whatsoever. Another quick 3-0 here from the LA Thieves. You look up and down the board here, I thought Hydra had a really good day. Crim6 played pretty decent, but they just didn't get the production that they needed out of Royalty and Clayster, as you can see in the stats underneath. And what can you say about Envoy? He absolutely fried in this matchup, and he fried in the later matchup. Again, we'll talk about those stats soon, but the hard point was pretty close, 250 to 230. I will give NYSL credit. I didn't think that this hard point would be this close, just because of how strong an LA Thieves hard point is to start the year here. S&D 6-3 win on Bokage, and then the control a 3-1 win in control on Gavutu. So overall, I thought that hard point was the closest map of this series, but when it comes down to it, just a pretty impressive performance from LA Thieves. I know I have said a couple times this year that I think they can be one of those surprise picks earlier on in the year at either this major or the next major, which is the Minnesota Rocker home series. So overall, decent performance here from LA Thieves, and exactly what we wanted to see out of them moving forward. Heading back into the bracket overview here, next match was Boston Breach versus the Florida Mutineers, and this one was a little bit of a shocker. So I think most people picked Boston to win this matchup. I know yesterday I picked Boston to win this matchup, but overall, if you look at the stats and how the first handful of maps played out, look at these overall stats here. So Boston, Nero had a 0.75, Cap 0.83, TJ Haley 0.82. They really weren't playing all that well. They were just getting timely kills and clutching up in certain situations that led to them getting a victory in this matchup here. You look underneath at Skies. Skies had a 1.17, Awakening a 1.6. That dude absolutely shredded today. And then Dave Patty also with a 1.04. Just to go through the maps, 250 to 159. I thought, Boston might be in trouble after this Bokage hardpoint, but they were able to turn it around and clutch up in that S&D to take that in round 11. You go back to another respawn game mode in the map 3, the Tuscan Control, and Florida wins this 3-1. Again, you look at the stats underneath, Awakening a 1.6, Dave Patty a 1.53. I mean, those two, especially in a couple of these respawn maps, really did carry Florida in those maps. Map 4, Tuscan Hardpoint, Boston was able to clutch up. But again, look at Awakening, a 37 and 13, a 2.85 KD, and they lost. So Vivid just didn't have a great day. This map, he was 16 and 26. We haven't really talked about him much in any of the other matches either. So need to see a bit more from Vivid as we as their season moves along, especially into Major 2. And then the S&D, Boston was able to clutch up again, 6-4 here. But again, you see Methods had a really good map, 13 and 7. Skies 1.33, Vivid 1.29. So overall, just a really nice series in Boston. It wasn't overwhelming, but they did what they had to do, especially in the S&Ds, to come away with a victory against the Florida Mutineers. And then next match, another huge upset here, and I think we're starting to see, I have mentioned this in a couple other videos and on the Minnesota Rocker podcast that I do, that if you look at the momentum of the Seattle Surge, that momentum is changing a bit, right? They started off with a super good performance at the Kickoff Classic, were able to win their first 2 online qualifier matches, and then after that, it was kind of a struggle, and now we're seeing them drop a match to what most people would call the worst team in the league. So as we go ahead and look at this matchup here, this did go to map 5. Overall, up and down across the board. First of all, I got to give props to Tom Gravity as he came out with a 1.13 to go ahead and lead this Paris Legion roster. If you look in terms of stats at Seattle, they didn't play terribly. Sib was +7 for the match. Pred +3. Mac was +9. Accuracy was only -4. It's not like they came out and just laid an egg. They just didn't do enough, especially in the S&Ds, to come out with a victory. So the first hard point, Seattle absolutely blew them out of the water on Tuscan, 250 to 138. And then Paris was able to clutch up, win a round 11 in the Desert Siege S&D. You go back to a respawn game mode. Seattle wins the Tuscan Control 3-2. Got a really good performance from Mac here with a 1.64. And then the Berlin Hardpoint. I figured on map 4 that this would be the end of Paris. I didn't think they would be able to clutch up, but again, Fellow 1.26, Gravity 1.26. So you got to give these guys credit for clutching up when their backs were against the wall. And then the S&D, I mean, the earlier S&D, Paris played really well, and this one showed the same exact thing. Berlin S&D, Paris was able to win this 6-3, and just overall, congratulations to them. I know that they've been dragged through the dirt a little bit here, especially throughout the first 4 weeks or so, the first major of this Call of Duty League season in Vanguard. So major props to them for getting a victory here. We'll see what happens moving forward. And then the last matchup of the night was this Elimination Round 2, which I expected to be an absolute thriller of a match between Los Angeles Thieves and Minnesota Rocker, and it kind of was. Maybe not in terms of how things ended up in the end, but to go through the stats, Draza had a great match. Octane had a good match. And when you look underneath from Minnesota, you got to give Attach credit. Attach was the best player overall in the lobby. And that's saying a lot because you kind of expect Standy to be that player. And Attach is maybe overlooked a little bit, but both matches in this first major, he absolutely showed up. So good job out of Attach. We look underneath, started with a Gavutu hardpoint, which really wasn't close at all. LA Thieves ran away with that. Second map, a Berlin S&D, and this is kind of what you expect, right? Minnesota last year during Black Ops Cold War is kind of in the same scenario that they're in this year, where they have to win map 2, get it to map 5 by trying to win one of the respawns. I mean, this Berlin S&D really wasn't close at all. They won this 6-2. The Control, even though it does say it was a 3-1, this was a little bit closer than this leads us to believe. Attached 35 and 23, Kenny 31 and 22. Great maps out of those two vets. And then it came to the hard point, and in this hard point, seemed like Minnesota was constantly playing catch up, and they just weren't able to get there. So overall, Draza played super well. We saw some really good maps from both Envoy and Kenny. So watch out for the LA Thieves moving forward, because I think that they could be in a position to really make some noise on Saturday to get to Championship Sunday. Now, how far they get, I don't know. That's a story for a different day. But with those recaps behind us, let's go ahead. Let's move into the matchups on Saturday. So first matchup of the day is going to be the Boston Breach versus the Paris Legion. And I got to say, in this one, I'm kind of leaning towards Paris, because Boston did not look great against Florida. They were just able to do enough. They weren't overwhelmingly good. They just did enough to be able to get the dub in that match against Florida. Whereas when it came to Paris, yes, it was kind of up and down. These are two teams that basically got their first round matchup wins in a similar fashion. So for this one, just based off of the new continuity that they're going to be forming with Tom Gravity being called up, I'm going to have them clutching up in S&D. I'm going to go 3-2 here for Paris. And this is a total, maybe it's prisoner of the moment, but I just feel strong about what they were able to do in that victory against the Seattle Surge. So I'm going to go Paris Legion here. Second matchup of the day, London Royal Ravens against the Toronto Ultra. London was able to beat LAG, but I don't think LAG was really playing great. They're potentially a team that you could see make a roster move here in the next couple weeks, because if they're not getting it done now with the vets they have on that roster, who's to say it's to come eventually if they're not doing it already? So London, a nice first round matchup, but the victory that Toronto Ultra had against the LA Thieves is far more impressive. And I just think they're a better SND team. I think London can probably hang in the respawns, but I'm going to go 3-1 here. Maybe London wins one of the hard points or the control, but I just don't see them winning SND. If it goes to map 5, I don't see them winning that at all. And then the huge matchup on this Saturday is going to be the Atlanta FaZe versus the home team OpTic Gaming, OpTic Texas, and this one has me intrigued. So heading into this, I every time I did one of these predictions, I just figured Atlanta FaZe is going to be the team to win here. Celium looks like the best player in the CDL so far, and when you get any sort of positive productivity, which is basically every matchup, but any sort of productivity out of Simp and Abizi, that team is disgusting. But from what we're seeing so far, OpTic looks really good. And if there's anybody that can play alongside Abizi and Simp, it's Shotzi. And he showed that in his first matchup against the Seattle Surge. However, that was against the Seattle Surge. We haven't seen them play really good competition yet. So heading into this one, I do think it comes down to the SNDs. And if we've learned anything from the Atlanta FaZe in Modern Warfare and during last year in Black Ops Cold War, it's that they just clutch up when they need to in S&Ds, especially round 11. So I think that this is going to be a banger of a series. I think it's going to go to map 5, and I think Atlanta FaZe is going to win that matchup 3-2. Next matchup here is going to be LA Thieves, which I believe if OpTic loses, then they move down underneath. So this is going to be against OpTic Gaming here, and this would be another banger matchup, LA Thieves versus OpTic Gaming. And in this one, I think after coming off a really close matchup against the Atlanta FaZe, I think OpTic is going to bring it here. Now, this is a bit tougher because, again, OpTic and LA Thieves are very similar in that their SNDs aren't great, but their respawn game modes are what is really leading them in their series so far this year. So it's going to come down to who can clutch up in the SNDs. We just saw LA Thieves really not look all that great against the Minnesota Rocker. So I'm going to say this goes back and forth. Another banger of a match to map 5, which OpTic ends up winning 3-2. And then there is one more matchup on Saturday. So this would be Paris against the loser from London and Toronto, which would be London. And in this one, I think London is the far better team. I think maybe Paris is able to come through and take an S&D, but overall, London will be way too strong in this one, especially in the respawn game modes, which would lead to a London versus OpTic Gaming matchup in the elimination bracket round 4. So as we head into Sunday, you'll have 4 matchups on Sunday, which will be the elimination round 4, winners finals, losers finals, and then the grand final. So that's what we have to look forward to. I know this video was kind of long, but there were a ton of matches to talk about on Friday, and then all of the predictions heading into Sunday. So if you guys are new around here, you enjoy this sort of content, please leave a like, hit that subscribe button, share it on social media. Anything you can do to help out the channel, I greatly appreciate it. There are going to be some crazy wild matchups heading into Saturday. So enjoy the Saturday matchups from the OpTic Major. We'll hit you with another upload Sunday morning to get you ready for Championship Sunday.